What is up, everybody? We are back with yet another weekly WNBA update coming off the heels of the WNBA All-Star Game in Indianapolis. A ton of stuff to talk about with that, both on and off the court. Today also marks the official start to the second half of the WNBA season, so who needs to get it together as we head into the second half of the season? So we'll get into all things All-Star, all things CBA negotiations, which were kind of a very public topic of discussion this past week. Also, some familiar faces are rejoining in the league, so a lot to get into. Without further ado, let's get into it. We will start today's show how we always do, with the fast five stories that you may have missed in the WNBA this past week. So let's start with number one. WNBA All-Star has come and gone. Team Collier defeated a Caitlin Clark-less Team Clark 151-131, and Afisa Collier changed the record books as she put up 36 points, the most points ever scored by a single player in a WNBA All-Star game. Number two, the skills and drills competition, and if you are a Liberty fan, then you had a great time watching the skills and drills competition as Tasha Cloud dominated that competition, and her New York teammate Sabrina Ionescu won the three-point contest and still holds the record for most points scored ever in a three-point contest. She set that in 2023 and tied for second place of most points scored ever in a three-point contest on Friday night. Number three, CBA meetings didn't seem to go as players wanted. They sported "Pay us what you owe us" t-shirts and pregame warmups. We've seen throughout history the WNBA, women's leagues as a whole, using their platforms to be able to send messages. We'll get into a lot more into that and what that means and a lot of the social media conversation that ensued after that. So we'll get into more of that as the show progresses. Number four, Kelsey Plum, Spark Star. She called out Team Clark for not being present for some of the meetings and talks about wearing those t-shirts. And she said that while Sabrina Ionescu was sitting right next to her. Sabrina Ionescu, a member of Team Clark. And number five, a 36% decline in viewership in this year's WNBA All-Star Game. It should also be known that it was the second most watched WNBA All-Star Game of all time, second to just last year. So Team USA versus Caitlin Clark and the All-Stars last year, a much bigger draw, but still the WNBA popularity, as we've seen from viewership in the All-Star Game, still one of the highest in league history. So that was this week's Fast Five. That's how we start every single show. Everything that you may have missed from WNBA All-Star Weekend and from the week that was in the WNBA. So let's get into it. It is now game time. We'll get into our four quarters. Cassandra, Negley, Caroline, Fenton hanging out with you. Cass, let's dive right into it. First quarter of today's show. You were there in Indy, boots on the ground. I hope for your sake that the travel delays and cancellations and early morning flights and late night arrivals were finally behind you and it was smooth sailing in Indy. Thank goodness. You deserve it. But just set the scene for us. What was it like walking around Indianapolis, in the hotel, just the vibe in Indy during All-Star Weekend?
It was an entire vibe. This was my fourth All-Star. For the first time, like, as soon as you get off the plane in Indianapolis, there is signage everywhere. Caitlin Clark is everywhere. And I do want to say, like, for Indianapolis, I've been there a lot over the past couple years. There has been fever gear in airports because I always check airports for gear. They have fever gear, but this was on another level, like introducing people to All-Star. They had Georgia Street blocked off. They had like orange carpeting there. They had an outdoor bar and food. People mingled. Businesses were staying open later. A coffee shop on Georgia Street that I go to, they were open until 7. They had specials for their All-Stars, their Fever All-Stars, and I love when businesses get involved. WNBA Live was just massive. This thing has grown every single year I've been there. There were fans with every different team you could imagine out there, old school vintage gear, new gear, the merch all over the place. The offerings for people to buy was amazing. There were activations all over the place. It was an event in a way that I have never seen the WNBA have an event.
There are so many indications of growth in this league. We'll get into the dollars and cents and the finances of that in the next quarter. But I think that viewership is one of those. When you're walking around the street anywhere in any city and you're seeing the orange WNBA hoodie, or you're seeing a Caitlin Clark jersey, or you're seeing a New York Liberty t-shirt, those are all indications of this league's impact and this league's growth. So I think that even if you go back to just like 5 years ago, maybe even 3 years ago at WNBA All-Star, if you're walking around the downtown of the host city, you're not seeing coffee shops with the, Natasha Cloud latte. You're not seeing bars with, WNBA games playing, or a WNBA flag hanging in their business or in their establishment. It sounds like the city was embracing the event, and it didn't matter if you were going to it or not. You knew it was happening.
Yeah, there were places all over the place. They had like Fever Hotspot. So just a place for people to gather. And I think your point about just the growth of the league and the players wanting a piece of the pie that we're going to talk about later, we knew that players in the league were going to meet on CBA negotiations. So when you're walking around looking at all this stuff and seeing the investment that the league made in WNBA Live, I think that was very much front of mind, that even though maybe viewership of All-Star Game is a little down, it's up a lot from 2 or 3 years ago. And so all of these growth points and places where businesses are making money off the WNBA now, because they absolutely are, players are looking around, seeing this same thing, saying, well, we want part of it.
What about the actual Friday night skills and drills, 3-point competition, the All-Star Game itself? What was the vibe like there with the fans? It was really powerful watching it, at least on TV, seeing how packed it was. But you were there. You experienced it firsthand, the actual kind of events themselves on the inside.
There were about 15,000 there on Friday night. I think from a media standpoint, where we're sitting, we can't kind of see everything on the court, which is perfectly fine because fans loved it. I think I was most impressed with how much on both nights they cheered for everyone. Like, when Caitlin Clark was introduced, it was obviously a different level. When the Fever players, Kelsey Mitchell, Leah Boston, were introduced, different level. The people love Erica Wheeler, who was with the Fever last year. But it was like, I'm always listening to see who is getting the biggest cheer. And it was genuinely hard to figure it out because everyone, Angel Reese, Asia Wilson, Brianna Stewart, starters, reserves, I hope it did come across on the screen, how much these people came out for the players, every player.
How does that compare maybe to a few years ago?
I think in the arena, it's always been very powerful, very fan heavy. I think what I will say about this, though, and Sabrina Ionescu, she didn't purposely take a shot when she said this, but when she was asked about the 3-point competition, she said it felt like it was sold out. It was close to a sellout. Whereas when she won in 2023, it did not feel like a sellout. And the reason that is, even though technically I think 2023 was a sellout and this year was not, was because she was playing in Michelob Ultra Arena in Las Vegas, which holds about 10,000 fans. When you're playing in Gainbridge or when she's at home playing in Barclays, you're holding 17,000 fans. And I think it's a note moving forward of when you're hosting All-Star and you have all of this interest in coming to the event, because it's not just going to a skills competition, it's also the ability to run into a player in your hotel. We need to be thinking, or the league needs to be thinking about what, the gravity of it, the bigness of it, put it in these large arenas to allow people the choice to come, because I think the WNBA is at that point now.
And it's fascinating moving forward, and not just growing, but growing strategically and having these calculated decisions moving forward with All-Star, or really any WNBA event. I've noticed, not even just WNBA events, but just sporting events in general, smaller, more compact cities, and I say smaller with an asterisk, they are such good host cities. New Orleans, I am of the belief, is the best sporting event or event city there is. Obviously, New Orleans is built for a party. It's built to host. It's built to feed people. And it's built for people to just have a great time. But New Orleans is also a city that is built in a way that you can walk everywhere. That if you have one person staying in a hotel on one side and another person staying in a hotel on the other, you're going to cross paths because it's compact. And when you walk around, you feel like there's something happening and the entire city is intoxicated by it. I'll contrast that with Phoenix, Arizona. I love both of those cities. Wonderful places to go. Phoenix is a massive, sprawling metropolis where you can stay in Glendale, Arizona, which is an hour away from any other point in downtown Phoenix, Arizona. You're not going to have that same kind of crossing of paths. You're not going to have that same almost like summer camp feel of camaraderie. Whereas, you look at the WNBA moving forward, having it in Indianapolis, same kind of vibe. It's small, it's compact. When the women's Final Four was in Tampa. Tampa's a massive city, but it was all very compact in the downtown Tampa area. You felt it. You saw people wearing Paige Beckers and Tahina Pow jerseys. You had bars and restaurants with Final Four signage in the windows. I think the WNBA moving forward should embrace and be strategic about the cities where they have those events to have that kind of feel. And that's not just a WNBA thing. Like, I felt that with the Super Bowl. New Orleans versus San Francisco next year. I love San Francisco, but I'm not looking forward to having such a sprawling event. Whereas in New Orleans, like, it's the freaking Super Bowl. It's the biggest sporting event there is and the biggest sporting event that there has to offer. But when you have a city that is so massive, that goes across several different, it's Santa Clara, it's, you name it, it doesn't have that same kind of feel, whether it's WNBA All-Star or if it's the biggest event in the world. Having those small, compact areas, I think, benefit the event itself.
I agree completely because that's exactly what it felt like. And credit to the WNBA and the brands that activated with them because, for example, the Unrivaled activation was a little bit outside of like what I would consider the downtown center. But what they did was State Farm had like whatever their tagline was, like an assist tagline, and they would take people in these like little carts to the activation and then bring them back for those rare instances that it was outside. But it was absolutely a vibe. Everyone loved it. It felt like WNBA completely took over the city everywhere you went.
That's amazing. That's what this league deserves. That's the kind of attention that this event should have. And I had a ton of FOMO. But so glad that you had a good time. So glad that your travel.
I had FOMO for you.
Thank you. Oh, it's been hard. It's been rough. I've been cheering though, like a proud mom on the sidelines, like, yay. Everybody's doing so good. I'm so proud of everybody. But, we kind of talked about the growth of the sport and how that shows up in several different ways. And I think that kind of is a seamless transition into our second quarter. And that is probably the biggest topic of conversation that came out from the weekend. Let's be honest. All-Star games and the X's and O's and what happened. It doesn't matter if it's WNBA or, the NFL Pro Bowl games or the NBA All-Star game. Ain't nobody care about what happens on the court. It's just a fun event and it's a fun, showcasing of talent. But the biggest story, I think, without a doubt, was the commentary and the subsequent conversation that came from the t-shirts that all of the WNBA All-Stars were wearing in pregame warmups. It said, "Pay us what you owe us." It spread like wildfire on social media. It was the topic of conversation on radio shows and television shows and news shows and sports shows, whatever it might have been. There's a lot of things that I could say about this, Cass. There's a lot of maybe biting of my tongue that I have done in some of the subsequent conversation. Just kind of your initial thoughts and reaction to the t-shirt and really kind of the subsequent reaction that has come from social media.
Yeah, the CBA negotiations have been, or the talk of CBA leading up to this has been there. I think all of us reporters were very much expecting it. It's the questions that we asked of players on Friday. What I wrote about this week and what I thought was when I was in New York earlier in the week for that Fever game and we were talking to Natasha Cloud, she had this quote that I just wrote in my phone. I didn't have my recorder on, but she was like, "We're not effing around." And that's the first thing I thought when I saw the t-shirts because the foreshadowing has been there. This is a league that advocated for the release of Brittany Griner from Russian detention. And they did that with t-shirts that I think they changed at halftime of All-Star a couple years ago. They've advocated to flip the Senate when Kelly Loeffler owned the Atlanta Dream. This is just kind of what they do. Sitting in the arena pregame, I was working on a story, but you could kind of feel the tenor shift. And then when I looked up, I saw on the video board that they had just taken off their warm-ups and they had these t-shirts on. And as the fans recognized it, like the roars started as they showed one player after another. And then come to the end of the game, like them cheering, pay them, during the TV interview, and Brittany Sykes walking behind with pay the players, definitely meant something to the players. They felt that immensely. It's a lot like the women's national soccer team and their fight for equal pay in 2019. Players afterwards said, like, the statement spoke for itself, and that's what they wanted, was to make noise and keep this at the forefront. I believe it was Fee who said, like, she hadn't stopped thinking about the meeting they had with the WNBA, and it just gave her chills, like, knowing that people were talking about it.
It's a powerful thing. And athletes using t-shirts or their platforms as a means to create change or better working conditions or better pay, that's not something new. And that's not something exclusive to women's sports or the WNBA. You go back to 2020 and the Black Lives Matter movement. There were t-shirts, there were rally towels, there were messaging in end zones or on the court, and, you know, the NFL and the NBA, the WNBA respectively. You know, we see it, cleats for a cause in the NFL every single year, that players in a single game a year can wear cleats to create buzz and awareness about respective charities. So this is not something new. And this is the WNBA on the heels of the latest CBA negotiations. Those happened, Thursday? And the game was Saturday? So there's a lot of buzz. They're creating more buzz. They're creating attention, and they're creating a movement so people know just how serious they really are about all of this. And a lot of the conversation after that has been, frankly, very, very frustrating. From people that don't know, I don't think, enough the amount of growth that's happening and is about to happen in this league. I've heard so much conversation of, well, the league, you know, they haven't made a profit. They had $40 million in losses last year, that this league wouldn't exist if it wasn't propped up by the NBA. And look, those things are true. And I don't think anyone is running from that. I don't think anyone can dispute the fact that the WNBA was operating at a $40 million loss last season. But I think what everybody is just conveniently not addressing when we talk about the finances and the dollars and cents of the WNBA is the fact that the Golden State Valkyries paid a $50 million expansion fee just a couple of years ago. The expansion fee now is $250 million. That's, $250 million from over just a couple of years. Golden State Valkyries, $50 million expansion fee. Sportico just came out with the WNBA Valuations. They are valuing the Golden State Valkyries at $500 million. That is a 10x increase just in their first year in the league, and they're selling the arena out at a higher rate than any other team in the league. They're selling merchandise. All of these things in just a couple of years, the seismic growth. Why aren't we addressing that? When we talk about the $40 million losses last season, it's fair, okay? It's true, and nobody is denying that. But what I think is also conveniently being left out is the fact that the TV deal right now in the WNBA is $45 million. The new TV deal kicks in next year in 2026, $200 million. It is growing 4 times what the WNBA is currently operating under. So sure, you look at the $40 million losses, you look at the TV deal now, and you look at the TV deal that's going to kick in, that's a $115 million difference when you come into account with the TV deal now and the losses that they were operating under. So I feel like a lot of people that are pushing back on the t-shirts that the players were wearing. I even heard someone say, hey, do your research. You're entitled. You are short-sighted if you think that you are owed anything from the WNBA. I urge all of those people to look at the growth and the investment into this league. It's not just the TV deal. It's the merchandise sales that are absolutely through the roof. It's the ticket prices that have gone up. It's the number of tickets that are being sold. And it's the number of expansion teams that are being added into this league. There are very smart and very wealthy people that are investing into this league. And they're not doing it out of charity. They're not doing it because they feel like it would be a really nice thing to do. They're doing it because it is a good investment. So these players are advocating for all of the money that is being invested into this league. They're advocating for a portion of that. And I don't see how anyone could rationalize that that's an entitled thing to do. That is a business decision, and that is what they are owed.
Yeah, the $40 million is from a report from the New York Post last year. And I think the big thing about this conversation in general is, first of all, owners can't speak on, or at least on the record, on what they're negotiating for. Players also are not going to speak on the record about specifically, like how much money or whatever. Now they've been like very open that they're not looking for, this always comes up, right? Like they're not looking for the same salaries as NBA players. What they're looking for is a revenue share of all of this money that's coming into the W that, is on their backs, in their words. But I think the thing is the financials of the W have always been very murky. We mostly just have reports. We're not looking at spreadsheets. I don't even know that WNBA players are looking at spreadsheets. They might be. But it's also the money that the WNBA is making is so tied up in the NBA. And I think it's like, what's the Instagram thing where it's like girl math?
Yeah.
Like you get it for free or whatever, or like
hey, if it's 50% off, then you're saving that money.
Yeah, like and the idea behind like that girl math or like boy math when it comes to whatever is that you can fudge numbers, right? Like you're telling yourself something. And I think that actually applies here because we've all worked in spreadsheets or done our own household budgets, and you can, fudge things, right? How many people make $100,000 but say they're living paycheck to paycheck because they're just like spending a lot on expenses, right? Mm-hmm. Like I think that applies here where the money is just really murky and we don't know exactly what the income is. But to your point, we see and the players see expansion fees, the media rights deal. Kathy Engelbert has not backed down over the past 5 years from saying that when we get a media rights deal that is fair for the WNBA, and I think even you could argue maybe the media rights deal should have been more, but it's also tied into the NBA deal, murky money. She's been very open that when we get that media rights deal, the players will be paid. It's just a matter of, I think, what that payment looks like. And if you're a player, one thing to know about the W is in the CBA, this last CBA, those salaries were set per year. It didn't matter how much the league made or the teams made or whatever. You can only make, $250,000 max this year, $240,000 max last year, like whatever. There is no moving salary cap. It's a hard cap. There is no moving income, like anything like that.
Yeah, and it's all very good points by you, and I think very good insight, because I think everybody wants to act like an economics professor whenever we start to talk about some of the finances of these leagues.
We should just all admit that we're not.
We're not. And like the minutia of collective bargaining agreements, like you need a law degree to truly understand what goes into all of those things. And I think that the point that the players were trying to make is, look, we are getting a lot of money into this league. That this league is growing at such a massive rate, and we want our fair share of that. If the league is going to be getting, I wrote down the numbers, from $45 million to $200 million in the TV deal, we want part of that. We want to be paid for that because we are a massive part of the reason why the TV deal is so much richer now, or it will be next season, than it was in the past. That is all that they are saying. I mean, the fact that Caitlin Clark makes $78,000 a year, that's ridiculous. The fact that in the NBA CBA has the players making 50% of the NBA TV deal revenue share, and the WNBA makes less than 10%. those numbers that's such a stark difference. And those numbers, I think, are a very clear and obvious slap in the face of the differences of some of these leagues. Now, again, I'm not saying that the WNBA brings in as much money as the NBA, because it doesn't. I'm not saying that the WNBA players should be making as much as NBA players. But what I am saying is a fair share of the deal and being able to capitalize on the riches that the league is enjoying because of these players is only fair.
Yeah, and to bring it back to the t-shirts, I think for the first time, and players said this before the t-shirts and after, for the first time they've had the most leverage they've ever had. They have more eyeballs on them than ever. So by wearing these t-shirts and putting out their argument in that way, even though I'm sure like you've seen these bad faith arguments, I think there are a lot of people suddenly on their side. And a big part of that is kind of the recognition of how little these rookies of the caliber of Caitlin Clark and Paige and, you know, everyone are making $78,000 a year. And there are a lot of Americans probably looking at that saying, I make more in salary than Caitlin Clark.
And it's ridiculous. And obviously Caitlin Clark makes more on, you know, Nike deals and Gatorade deals and endorsement deals. But the fact that her WNBA contract, when her contribution and her value to the league is truly insurmountable, and that's what she makes, I think it would make anyone want to champion for higher salaries and a higher salary cap in this league. And even if you don't want to get into the CBA and the money and the TV deal, I mean, just look at it. Like, it will slap you right in the face how much this league is growing when you're looking at the additions and the expansion teams, when you're looking at the viewership, when you walk around on a street and you can see WNBA merch and gear and ticket sales and all of this money. You don't need to be a law professor or an economics professor to understand that this league is growing. It'll slap you right there in the face. So, frankly, bravo to the players for advocating for what they feel is right and what they feel that they deserve. Okay, a little bit of a halftime break, a little bit of a chaser there after some heavy discussions. Cass, were you graced by the presence of the stud buds this past weekend? Were you in the live stream?
I was not a role player, but I was definitely a background player. Yeah, I'm definitely in the background of some of those.
Okay, so if you missed it, okay, the stud buds on Twitch, it's Natasha Heidman and Courtney Williams. They were live streaming everything during All-Star Weekend. It was after parties, before the game, in their hotel rooms. I mean, they were getting hundreds of thousands, if not close to 1 million views on some of their live streams. They got Kathy Engelberg dancing to, Knuck If You Buck. You got Courtney Williams telling Diplo to play different music. Like, it was the funniest behind-the-scenes look at All-Star Game, and it was so fun that it came at the hands of two players in the league.
Yes, I was at the Unrivaled pop-up, and I was chatting with the PR person, and Fee had shown up. And of course, like, everyone was really excited to see Napheesa Collier. They wanted her autograph. But then they had the Twitch feed on the screen, and the PR person turns to me. They're in the car, and she goes, "Oh, good, they're on their way here." And so I'm like, okay, like, let's see how this goes. As soon as they walked in, this packed warehouse roared. Like, they were so excited. They were doing photo shoots with Fee, like, in the tunnel. Like, fans were just anticipating seeing them. They took over All-Star Weekend. Fee even said at the end, her final question was, like, what was your favorite moment or something? And she was like, I think the stud buds were everyone's favorite moment.
It had to be. I mean, I even saw on the orange carpet before the game, I forgot the platform that was asking these questions, so I apologize to the creators, but they were asking the question of who's the funniest person, who's the funniest player in the WNBA. Obviously, our girl, Sydney Colson, got plenty of votes because that's my vote. Sydney Colson is the funniest person maybe I've ever met. But the stud buds were getting a lot of love, too. And it was so fun to see, maybe if that wasn't an event that you were even looking into or players that you didn't even know, like, they brought so much attention and viewership to the weekend, and it was just so fun to see it through their eyes. And moving along into our third quarter, some player acquisition news. Emma Meesman, 2019 WNBA Finals MVP, two-time WNBA All-Star, will be making her return to the league. So she's been out of the league since 2022. And this past season, she's been in Belgium playing with her national team in Eurobasket. But she makes her return to the New York Liberty, where she will reunite with her former WNBA champion teammate, Natasha Cloud. Cass, your reaction to her return, and what does she add to this Liberty team?
The super team gets more super. They're going to have so much versatility in the front court, so much power. Usually, like coming on mid-season, there might be some chemistry issues, some getting up to speed, but this is probably the perfect fit for her. She's played with Brianna Stewart overseas. She's played with JJ, Jonquel Jones overseas, and JJ is supposed to come back this week. Obviously, won with Cloud, and she was a huge reason the Mystics won that championship. Elena Deladon dealing with those herniated discs in her back. Like, Emma was massive for them. And then she's actually also played for Sandy Brondello and Olaf Lang, who are on the coaching staff. So it should be pretty seamless. I mean, to me, this is a massive leveling up for the Liberty in terms of really, really taking down Minnesota, should that be the finals rematch that we see.
Oh, the rich get richer. Every single time.
As they do. As they
do. I love this edition, though. And it was reported that she also was considering the Mercury and the Lynx. But I love this addition to New York. That it has felt like from the jump from this season, even following the their championship last season, that their number one intention was running it back. And now they're kind of, standing 10 toes on that intention at the beginning of the season of, we understand that Nafisa Collier is quite literally unstoppable. We understand that the Minnesota Lynx are now the favorite and are still at the top of the league, but the Liberty are doing everything in their power to make that push for a back-to-back championship. So truly, the rich get richer. All right, let's move on to the fourth quarter. Today marks the official start of the second half of the WNBA season. So we know who's at the top of the league, and we know at least who feels comfortable to make a push in the postseason. That's Minnesota. That's New York now. Rich get richer. Phoenix has been playing very well. Atlanta has been clicking well. Seattle. All teams that are in the top 5 of the rankings right now. But Cass, who needs to get it together in the second half? Who needs to really put their foot on the gas as we enter the second half of the season?
I mean, we talk about them all the time, but the Indiana Fever need to figure it out. They need to remain consistent. Obviously, part of that is Caitlin Clark is not healthy, which has been a massive downer. They just can't get any consistency. If you look back at their season, it's like 2 weeks with her, 2 weeks without her, a week without her, a week with her. And it's really important because they are stuck kind of in that fight for the 8th playoff seed with the Aces, the Mystics, and the Valkyries. So those teams are going to be very important in terms of who gets those kind of final playoff seeds.
That's who I think needs to get it together is Caitlin Clark's groin. That's kept her on and off the bench for the last month or so. Caitlin Clark's groin needs to get it together. Because, look, the Fever have shown they can win games without Caitlin Clark. They won the Commissioner's Cup and took down Minnesota at Minnesota for the Commissioner's Cup, but they just haven't been able to do it consistently. And they're way too up and down and hot and cold without her for me to feel like Indiana can make a true push for a championship. If Caitlin Clark is still on the bench, off the bench, she's healthy, ? She's not healthy. So Caitlin Clark's groin. Get it together, sister. Another team that I think needs to get it together, and we've been talking about this team needing to get it together all season. Yeah. Their coach has been talking about them needing to get it together all season long. It's Vegas. It's the Aces. I mean, the Aces right now sitting in the WNBA standings, they're right at 500. They're 11-11. They're tied with the Mystics at 11-11. What's going on, Cass? Like what does Vegas need to do to get it together in the second half of the season?
I mean, I think the story is always defense with them. That's what Becky Hammond talks about, and that's really what won them their second championship, definitively. So if you can get it together defensively, maybe you can take a few steps up. I think for me, though, what I'm also looking at, oddities of the schedule that we always talk about. We have yet to see a Lynx Liberty matchup. We're about to see 4 in 3 weeks. And originally, when I was thinking about this over the weekend, like on the plane ride back from All-Star, I was like, you know, depending on how healthy Jonquil Jones is coming back, like, is this going to be where the Lynx really separate and they seal that home court advantage for the finals because they are playing the Liberty 4 times and then maybe the Liberty sink and they get stuck with the Mercury. And now Emma Mieseman is potentially in the mix for some of these games. And now it's becoming a very, these are going to be tight. Like, are we going to see maybe even a flip at the top of the standings?
So just for reference, so the Lynx host the Liberty on July 30th. That's next Wednesday, as the time we're recording this podcast. And then they go to New York August 10th. Back at home against, you guessed it, New York on August 16th. And then, let's turn around and go back to New York on August 19th. So the Lynx, the Liberty, their schedule shakes out a little bit differently. But the Lynx will have 3 consecutive matchups against the Liberty in mid-August. Ew.
Cool.
That's, I mean, like, heck yeah. Like, these are the 2 best teams in the league, but, like, what? Like,
do I want them playing that much, like, in a condensed space, though? Not really.
Not in the regular season. Like, sign me up for that in the postseason. Like, sign me up for that in the WNBA finals. But, like, in mid-August, ew.
Oh, dear. I mean, it's another example of how the footprint needs to expand, even though Kathy Engelbert didn't seem super on board with it expanding. Like, this is wild.
Like, let Kathy Engelbert just go have fun and dance to Nuck If You Buck and, you know, really just let her hair down in Indianapolis, as we saw at All-Star Weekend. Any final thoughts as we head into the second half? Just players you're watching, teams you're watching, anything in the standings that you're keeping an eye on?
I mean, I'm going to side with Sabrina Ionescu. We didn't bring this up earlier, but if All-Star were a little bit longer, I think we would all be a lot happier and maybe we'd have a better All-Star game and more rest and relaxation. I feel like everyone just got back from Indianapolis and we're playing games.
Yeah. All-Star break, you mean, right? Not All-Star Weekend?
Yes.
Yeah.
Not really
I think it should be illegal that the WNBA All-Star game was on Saturday night and we have games tonight, Tuesday, July 22nd. Like, and we had games last Wednesday. Mm-hmm. And then we had the skills and drills competition and 3-point competition on Friday, All-Star games Saturday, games Tuesday. And I think that there is an epidemic in professional sports of players not caring about the All-Star games. And we're seeing that kind of show up in the viewership, that fans don't really want to watch a game that players don't care about. Like, Adam Silver has talked a lot about that, the commissioner of the NBA, about how do we make the NBA All-Star game matter again? And probably the foundation of that argument is, how do we make the players care about it again? I think when you look at the WNBA All-Star game and the WNBA All-Star quote-unquote break, if players are exhausted and they're dealing with, you know, bumps and bruises and nicks that they suffered a couple of days ago, they're probably not going to care about the All-Star game very much, knowing that they have to play again in just a couple of days. So it's good for the players to have a true break. And I think it's good for the league, for players to be able to really look at this game, have anticipation for it, and not just view it as a thing that's sitting in between them and another regular season game just a couple of days after.
Yeah, we'll see how this week goes with games, but it's just very close. I think that's the overarching thought heading into the second half of the season.
Yeah, like let it breathe a little bit. Like, let the WNBA All-Star Weekend hangovers go away a little bit before you start playing games again. But let's look ahead to next week. As we do enter the second half of the season, we've got some massive games to keep an eye on. Coming up on Wednesday, July 23rd, we've got Atlanta on the road at Phoenix. 10 o'clock Eastern start. I just moved into the Eastern time zone. I'm going to have to get used to that because that is past my bedtime, but nonetheless, we shall watch it. I'm a Central Time Zone elitist. Grew up in the Central Time Zone. Spent a majority of my lifetime in the Central Time Zone. Now I'm like, wait, it starts at what time? No. PM? No. But West Coast is going to West Coast. The next day, Thursday, July 24th, we've got Vegas at Indy. So we've got Asia Wilson and Caitlin Clark. Fingers crossed that she'll be healthy for that game. That game starts at 7 o'clock Eastern time. Super, super important game, Cass, for the Aces taking on Indy in terms of the standings.
Yeah, they're both in that fight kind of for the 8th seed. So those games against each other, when you're talking about Fever, Mystics, Aces, Valkyries, they're all going to matter down the second half.
Third and final game to keep an eye on this week in terms of some heavy hitters in the standings. We've got Phoenix on the road at New York, 7:30 p.m. Eastern start. That can do that. I can do 7:30. That works with Kathy, if you're listening. That works for my schedule, so thank you for doing that. But that is going to do it for us this week. For Cassandra Negley, I am Caroline Fenton. We are back every single week right here, Yahoo Sports YouTube page, sports.yahoo.com. Wherever you find your podcast, come check us out. Every single week we'll hit you with all of the latest news in the WNBA.